All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into Luttie's Look Back. It's another look back on site here at Bogle Park. Arkansas softball falling in their super regional this past weekend to Ole Miss, falling just one game short of making it into the Women's College World Series for the first time in program history. We'll talk about that coming up on today's show, as well as Arkansas baseball and Little Rock baseball, the miraculous run they made. The regional matchups that they've got coming up. We will talk about those, as well as a wrap around some other college baseball and a quick look at the high school state championships that were from this past weekend. But we'll start my show how we always do with my three big things. On the softball side of things, the first three big things I think we've had for softball before in a Luttie's Look Back. The first one, the so-called Bogle Bombers were non-existent. The second thing, the good and the bad of Peyton Burnham, which we'll talk about. And the third big thing, the third super regional exit in the last 5 years for Arkansas softball. So quickly, let's circle back to my first big point. The first one, the Bogle Bombers. All season long, this Arkansas offense has been really good. One of the best in the country, one of the best in the SEC. And they've done it right here at home. They've hit home runs. They've dominated teams. It's been really fun to watch. And in this super regional, we just didn't see that same team as far as hitting home runs. They were able to get runs in other ways. They scored 7 runs in their first game on Friday night, but pitching didn't help their offense out. So that was certainly a struggle all weekend for Arkansas, really. Obviously, when you lose your super regional that you're supposed to win, you're the number 4 team in the country facing off against an Ole Miss team that is a 2 seed, so not even in the top 16 nationally seeded team, and you lose to them. That's obviously frustrating. And so home runs were an issue. On Friday, they only had 2 home runs. That was all they had the entire weekend, and you just expected more out of this team, especially given that they were so close to making it into the Women's College World Series. After those 2 home runs Friday, that was it. Saturday, no home runs. Sunday, no home runs. The offense struggled, and it's hard for me to put whether I put this super regional loss on offense, the bats, or defense wasn't an issue. Pitching was certainly at times. But offense was certainly a struggle. And when you have a really good team that hits a lot of home runs, that hits almost, I wrote it down somewhere, 4 or 5 home runs per weekend, and you only get 2 out of the biggest weekend of the season, then that's an issue, and that's where you lose games. And so that's what happened with Arkansas. The Bogle Bombers were non-existent this weekend here in Fayetteville. The second big thing is Peyton Burnham, the freshman pitcher for Arkansas, really good. And she's going to be really good in the future. And she's already really good now. She's going to be even better if she chooses to stay with this team for another season. I say if because that's the thing with how things work now, right? The transfer portal, she could go anywhere she wants and be a really good pitcher on any team. Or she could stay and play for the Razorbacks for another season. We'll have to see what happens. But we saw the good and the bad of Peyton Burnham this weekend. On Saturday, it was the good. It was the best Peyton Burnham we've seen all season long. A complete game, 7 innings pitched, only gave up 3 hits, no earned runs, struck out 7. She was dominant, and then she turned around yesterday and was not that same pitcher that we saw Saturday. And it was pretty quick. In the first inning of yesterday's game, you could see that this was going to be a different game than the previous day. Ole Miss put up 4 runs in the top of the first, including a 2-run home run. They stole home twice in the first inning. And I think that really affected this team after they put up that many runs in the first inning. Obviously, they responded, and they had a good response. But 2 things can be true. One being Peyton Burnham helped Arkansas absolutely the entire season, and she got them to Game 3, and she helped them get one step away from making it to the College World Series, but she also hurt them in this game. In the game on Sunday, 3 2/3 innings pitched. She didn't start out well. She exited. Robin Heron came in, and then Burnham came back in after Heron was done for a little bit. But Burnham in with 4 hits, 5 earned runs, 4 strikeouts. She wasn't awful, but it wasn't good enough. Wasn't good enough to get the wins. And the 2 home runs, one of them being the top of the 7th, the solo home run, and then one being at the very beginning of the game in the top of the first, that cost Arkansas. and that hurt them for sure. So that's big point number 2. The big point number 3, it's their third super regional exit in the last 5 years. I know all these are kind of negative, and there is some negatives and some positives, but right now it is a lot of negatives because you have a team that is really good, a team that is good enough to win the national championship, and they fall short of that in the super regional. And it's the third time they've done that in the last half decade. That's not any fun, right? The past 5 years, Arkansas has been really good, and they've got knocked out of the postseason all those 5 years in this stadium, in Bogle Park. And 3 of those 5 have been super regional games. 2 of the 5 have been one win away from making it to the College World Series, and they haven't done that. And, it can't be the players are nervous because they fell in the regional last year, or a few years ago they lost the super regional. It can't be that because there's a completely new team every other year. There's only 1 or 2 players that I feel like were on that team a few years ago when they lost to Texas in the super regional, one being Reagan Kramer. But everyone else is completely new. So I don't think it's a mental thing that they're like, we lost in the regional last year, all nervous about this year. No, I think it's just how the game works sometimes, and it sucks. It really does. If you're a Razorback fan, and if you've been following the softball team for any number of time, or in any number of years, it really does stink. So yeah, the third super regional exit in the last 5 years, that's disappointing. But I do want to look at the positives from this season. Another 40-win season. For the last 5 years, it's been 40-win seasons for Arkansas softball and for Coach Deifel. And we have to put things in perspective, right? You look at what Arkansas softball was doing 10 years ago. They were non-existent. They were the worst team in the SEC. And then enters Coach Deifel, and she completely changes things and turns things around. So you have to look at it with an optimistic viewpoint. It was another terrific season. Besides a few players, they'll have a lot of really good players coming back next season. But right now, it does sting. It does sting for Razorback fans. It stings for me covering this team. And probably more than anybody, it stings for the players, and it stings for head coach Courtney Deifel. And as you can imagine, she was pretty emotional after the game. Here's some of the stuff she had to say after the loss yesterday.
This group will never happen again. And so I think all of us right now, we're heartbroken. And then it's like, what are all the great things about this group? And we're going to move that forward, and we're going to continue to build. I'm sure we're supposed to learn a lesson of how everything happened this weekend and the cards we were dealt. I'm not there yet because this group committed to doing it right. They committed to every part of it, and I just wish for them we had it full go from the jump. But today wasn't our day. It wasn't our day. We've had a lot of days, and we will have a lot of days. But today's not an indication of what this group is. This group was incredibly special, and one that left their mark on this program and left a mark on me.
Well, definitely a sad Coach Deifel right there. But again, a lot of optimism for Arkansas softball going forward. You can see it's started coming down a little bit. I don't know if you can hear a little bit of the rain, but we're going to keep pushing through and finish through Luttie's Look Back because we have to, right? That was softball. All right, it was disappointing. Let's move on to Arkansas baseball now. We're talking a lot of baseball basically for the rest of the show until we'll touch on state championships later in the baseball world. Arkansas, the number 3 overall national seed in the NCAA tournament. They will host a regional this upcoming weekend here in Fayetteville. Before we get on to that, it's called Luttie's Look Back, so I gotta talk a little bit about the past of what happened, and that's Arkansas falling in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament as the 2 seed. That was disappointing, a disappointing way to start the postseason, if you want to say that the conference tournament is the postseason, and it is. And really, it was Arkansas obviously losing to Ole Miss, giving up 5 runs in the first inning. Not ideal. That hurt them. An uncharacteristic error by Vahiva Aloy, the SEC Player of the Year, maybe easily one of the best players in college baseball this season. There were just a lot of little things in that game, besides the bullpen. The bullpen in this SEC tournament game against Ole Miss was great. Gabe Gackel, Cole Gibbler, Christian Fouch, they were all good. Zach Root was better after his little bit of a shaky start, even though it was somewhat his defense's fault for a lot of those, for a couple of those runs, I should say. Sluggish offense, some missed opportunities, runners left on base down the stretch. Look, there was a number of issues with this game, and it's kind of in the past. That's why I'm barely not even going to talk about it. And it was, I don't know, 5 days ago is what it feels like now. I can't even remember what day they played. Thursday, Friday. It feels like forever ago. And I don't think Arkansas is putting a lot of stock into it either. They're moving on, and they're in the NCAA tournament. They're the number 3 team in the country, the number 3 overall national seed. They've got their regional, and let's talk about it. In their regional, Arkansas, the 1 seed, the 2 seed, Kansas, the Jayhawks out of the Big 12, the 3 seed, Creighton out of the Big East, and then the 4 seed, North Dakota State. So, in the limited time I've sat here and just watched the selection show, the limited stuff I know about each of these teams, let's go over it quickly before we move on to Little Rock baseball and before we possibly hear from head coach Dave Van Horn. The first one, let's talk about Arkansas's first matchup. Friday, 2 o'clock is when they'll begin the postseason, the real postseason, in their regional and face off against North Dakota State. That's the 4th seed out of these 4 teams that are in their regional. By the way, if they were to win their regional, Arkansas, they would face off and be linked with Tennessee. So Tennessee would be coming here to Fayetteville next weekend. Not this upcoming weekend, but next weekend if Arkansas were to make it to the Super Regional, and if Tennessee were to win their regional as well that they are in. It's probably either them or Wake Forest that would be coming out of that regional. Let's talk about Arkansas's regional. The first one, North Dakota State. They're not good. They're not good. They won their conference. What are they, the Bisons? Or Bison, whatever. I don't know which one. Is it with an S? I don't care. North Dakota State's not very good. All right. Have I watched a game that they've played all season long? No. But they're obviously the 4 seed in Arkansas's regional. I don't even think they have a winning record on the season. They're a good fielding team. They got the conference's pitcher of the year. But they're not good enough to beat Arkansas. And the 2 biggest stats I looked at for all of these teams that the Razorbacks could potentially face off against in their regional, I looked at batting average, so how good are they at offense, and pitching. How good are they pitching-wise? I probably should have looked up defense as well, but I just now I'm thinking about that. It's too late. It's too late. All right. Batting average-wise, they are 271st in the country out of 299 teams in batting average. They average a .255 batting average. That's not very good. Usually these teams that are the smaller teams that play in crappy conferences, usually they're pretty good, some of these statistics. And you might see it with Creighton and TCU, but not with North Dakota State. They are very bad hitting the ball. I don't know how they won their conference tournament, but they did. And they're here, and they're probably just here to have fun. I'm guessing. That's their batting average. Their pitching is a little bit better, but not much. 6.05 ERA, meaning they give up 6 earned run average of 6 runs per game. Per game? Yeah, the average, yeah. That's 150th in the country, so about halfway there. A little over halfway. Not great pitching either. So Arkansas should have no problem taking care of business on Friday, but let's talk about Saturday. The 2 seed or the 3 seed, these are the teams that will possibly stump Arkansas. Remember, the past 2 seasons, Arkansas has lost in their own regional. And they've lost to teams from the Big 12. I think it was Kansas State, then TCU. I think Kansas State last year, and then TCU the year before that. And who does the selection committee put in Arkansas's regional this season? A Big 12 team. And it's Kansas. That's the 2 seed. That's the team that's going to give Arkansas fits. Now, I'll be honest. When I saw the bracket and saw the Arkansas regional, I said, nah, we're not. Arkansas's out. Kansas is going to win the regional. Because just recent history, right? The Big 12 coming here to Fayetteville, taking down Arkansas back-to-back seasons when Arkansas has been a top 8 national seed. I don't want that to happen again. And I thought it would happen until I did a little bit of research. Now, not a lot, but enough to be a little bit more confident that Arkansas will get out of its own regional this season. So let's talk about the Jayhawks. Again, batting average, ERA. Batting average at .290, batting average 87th in the country. A 5.00 ERA, 73rd in the country. There's no one, when I look at their lineup, besides Brady Bollinger, who's first team All Big 12, and he's batting above 300, and he's one of their best players. He's their number 1 hole hitter. besides him, maybe another guy, there's no one who really scares me on this Kansas lineup. They only have 2 guys that are batting above 300. They're not amazing hitting the ball. They're not amazing pitching the ball. They're pretty good at both. They're a pretty level team. So it's hard to know what exactly to expect. Another thing I saw when looking at their schedule, they didn't lose to Missouri, but they lost to Missouri. Sorry, they beat Missouri by only 1 run. And if you remember, Missouri was the worst team in the SEC this season, the worst team in the history of the SEC probably. They almost went winless. They somehow beat Texas A&M and swept them and had 3 wins. But Missouri's not very good. Kansas barely beat them. So that tells me Kansas isn't amazing. Not a lot about this team scares me. Besides Brady Bollinger, their pitching doesn't scare me. They don't have a guy that's, sub 2 ERA. I like Arkansas's chances. I like Arkansas's chances against the Jayhawks. Now I'll talk about Creighton, the 3 seed. They could possibly play Creighton at some point in the tournament. Creighton, not a good hitting team, 120th in the country in batting average, but a pretty good pitching team, 15th in the country in earned run average. Which, again, they play in the Big East, not a good conference. And so I don't put a lot of stock into that. That does scare me a little bit. And what also scares me / confuses me is that they have multiple guys that can do it. When I look at their pitching and the guys who go out there and pitch, they don't have a bona fide ace. It doesn't look like. They don't have one guy that's like 2.75 ERA, 85 innings pitched this season. They have a lot of guys. They probably have a dozen guys that are 50-plus innings pitched. So they can go with anybody on any given day, which makes them seemingly pretty deep pitching bullpen. But again, they play in the Big East, so I wonder when they come to Arkansas what will happen when they face off against a Razorback team that is 17th in the country in batting average. One of the top offenses in the country, no matter what you look at it. 2 common opponents Creighton had. They lost to Portland earlier in the season. Arkansas beat Portland 20-3 earlier in the season. You like that, right? On the flip side, they beat Kansas State. Arkansas lost to them. That was way back in February, so it doesn't matter that much. But just 2 common opponents for Creighton and the Razorbacks. So they're the 4 teams. Arkansas, Kansas, Creighton, North Dakota State. If the Razorbacks win, they'll face off probably against Tennessee in their Super Regional. Guys, I'm relatively confident. I'm cautiously optimistic in Arkansas's regional and in Arkansas making it out of their regional. Now, you face off against Tennessee next weekend in the Super Regional. That could be different. I mean, I'm still pretty confident because they beat Tennessee 2 out of 3 in the same place that they might play them next weekend. Super Regional might be a different story. We'll talk about that when we get there. But the past few years, it's been like, all right, Arkansas is a shoo-in for the Super Regional or a shoo-in for making it back to Omaha to the College World Series. Now, because of the past 2 seasons, you just don't have that confidence. And I know I'm talking a lot about, recent history, but this year's team is good. I know they've showed signs that they haven't been amazing at times this year, but they're a really talented team. They're a really deep team. Man, if they play their best ball, they don't make mental mistakes, they don't get in their head, if they have some good starting pitching from Zach Root, if they don't lose game number 2 to Kansas or to Creighton, they're good. They're in the clear, making it on to the Super Regional. So we'll see. But I'm cautiously confident in Arkansas in their own regional in the NCAA tournament. Okay, that is the Razorbacks. Let's move on to Little Rock now. How about the Trojans? 5 wins in 4 days in the OVC tournament to win the OVC title. What really impressed me, the first 3 wins, 10-1 win, 9-7 win, 9-8 win, a lot of offense. Once you play that many games in that amount of time, your pitching starts to run out a little bit. And it was kind of flipped because their offense was dominant, pitching wasn't good to begin with. And then after that, the semifinal game and the final game in the OVC tournament, pitching was great. Jack Klein was great in the championship game. Complete game effort. We'll talk about their regional in a second, but here's where I want to talk about my Luttie's Legend of the Week, a new segment we've been doing if you haven't been watching, and it's coming to a Little Rock player, and it's a guy who has earned it and showed up. They needed guys like this guy to show up in the OVC tournament in order for them to make it a miraculous run. As an 8 seed, Little Rock had lost 13 of their last 14 games heading into the OVC tournament. They won it all, and now they're on to the regionals, to the NCAA tournament, their first NCAA tournament appearance since 2011. And there's one guy, there's multiple guys, but there's one guy who's deserving of my Luttie's Legend of the Week. It's Cooper Chaplin. Coming into the OVC tournament, he was 1 for 8 in their final regular season series of the season against Southeastern Missouri. He had 1 hit, 8 at-bats. Not good. He was slumping a little bit. He turns around in the OVC tournament, goes 8 for 19. 8 for 19. Over the past month before the OVC tournament, he had 2 RBI. In the tournament, he had 4 RBI. He doubled that in the OVC tournament. And there was a lot of players like him who played exceptional, but Cooper Chaplin is one of them. So now they've got their regional. Cooper Chaplin leading the way with a lot of other really good players, but they've got LSU in their regional. And before we talk about that regional, I'll talk about it a little bit in a second, but we're first going to hear from head coach Chris Curry, what he had to say after the selection watch party today.
We've been, chip on our shoulder, underdog, left for dead 2 or 3 times, and dirt kicked over our grave a few times already. So we're fine with that. We know that no one in the postseason sneaks up on anyone, and however, like you said, that's a mentality we've kind of embraced. And why not send us to one of the best places in college baseball to play? That is on brand for this team. And whenever they tell us to play, these guys are not going to shy away or back down from the big moment.
All right, good as always to hear from head coach Chris Curry right there. An amazing, miraculous, incredible run in the OVC tournament. Now, obviously they make it to the NCAA tournament, and you knew because they played in the OVC, because they're a smaller school, that they would get paired with a tough team in a tough regional. And many thought it might be the Razorbacks. It might be right here in Fayetteville, and that would have been cool for them. But they get to go a little bit further and maybe more of a challenge. I'm not saying that this team is better than Arkansas, but they're pretty good. And when Arkansas played in Baton Rouge, there's clearly the better team, and that was LSU. And that's the number 1 seed in their regional. They got LSU, the 1 seed, the number 6 overall team in the country, Dallas Baptist University, Rhode Island, and then Little Rock as the 4 seed. So the Trojans will start off Friday against the Tigers. I mean, if they keep playing like they did, who knows? But still, it's LSU. It's one of the best teams in the country. Kate Anderson, Anthony Eisen. If you're a Razorback fan, you watched it when they played early on in the season. And those two, that 1-2 punch, their Friday night starter and their Saturday night starter, really good. Really good. And you'd expect one of them gets the nod against Little Rock and probably dominates. But, Trojans, let's be realistic. It's pretty low chances that they come out of that regional. Now, crazier things have happened. And if this team continues to stay hot, I might like their chances. If they hit the ball like they did in the first few games of the OVC tournament and pitch like they did in the last few games, they combine those, maybe. But if not, I don't think they have a chance. But I'm not saying they don't fully have a chance. I think they do if those two things happen. You got to have a complete game effort. And that's just to take down LSU. But more realistically, to get a win would be great. Even if it's not against LSU, they lose the game against LSU, probably playing Rhode Island next. To get a win against Rhode Island would be awesome, right? To get one win in the NCAA tournament. I should have written it down. I can't remember if they did that. If they did that a few years ago, or 2011 when they played. I was a youngin' back then, so I cannot remember if they ended up winning a game in the NCAA tournament or not. But that's Little Rock. Let's look at 3 other teams from this past weekend that aren't in the NCAA tournament and fell in their conference tournaments. Probably the most disappointing one is UAPB. Had a really good season. Their most conference wins since 2002, and then they lost back-to-back games in the SWAC conference tournament as the 4th seed. So there's optimism. There's like, okay, they could be in the NCAA tournament. They lose back-to-back games. Positive, Eli Grease-Smith was great all season long. He's set the UAPB single-season record with 72 hits. A great season for UAPB, but one that comes up just a little bit short. UCA, on the other hand, not a great season for them. They finish 20-35 overall. They go 1-2 in the ASUN tournament. It's their lowest win total since 2016. So disappointing for UCA, tough year for them. Arkansas State, a really great year for them. Their most overall wins since 2019, their most conference wins since 2014. But in their single regional portion of their bracket, I think they were maybe the 6th seed or the 8th seed or the 4th seed. I can't really remember. It was an even number. In their conference tournament, but they lost their first game 13-8 to Georgia Southern. And that's a disappointing way to end the season because it was a great season for them. Now, they weren't going to win the conference tournament and go to the NCAA tournament because the Sun Belt's really good. They got 2 teams that are top 16 in the country and hosting a regional this weekend. But to lose that first game and be out just like that was tough. But overall, well done to Mike Silva in his first year as head coach with that A-State program to give them their most wins in a couple seasons. That's really impressive. All right, that's all the college baseball talk. Quickly, some high school state championships from over the weekend. If you're a high school soccer fan or just a high school fan in general, some of our teams in the area that got wins that walked away with state championships this weekend. In the baseball world, Harding and Brooklyn. Harding won 14-11 in 14 innings. I think it was the longest game in Arkansas State baseball playoffs history. Incredible game. Insane. Incredible what the Wildcats did there. They're state champs. An insane game if you didn't miss it. Obviously, 14 innings. There was some crazy thing that would have to happen, and it did. And that's in the baseball world. In the softball world, Mayflower 9-1 win over Harding to win the 3A title. Bauxite losing to Pea Ridge. And the 5A softball world, which we probably talked about more than anything this past week, Benton dominating Sheridan. 2 teams that accounted for every state championship in the Class 5A for the last 9 seasons. So both powerhouses in softball. But it was the Panthers taking down the Yellow Jackets 11-4 in that one. In the softball world, boys soccer, Catholic loses a heartbreaker to Heritage in penalty kicks. Russellville dominates their 4th in the row state title in the Class 5A. They beat Searcy 6-0. Robinson in the 4A boys won. Robinson in the 4A girls won. So great job to the Senators for 2 state title wins for both of their soccer teams. Episcopal dominates their game. They're winners of the 3A boys soccer. Little Rock Christian winning in the 5A, beating Searcy 3-1. In the 5A girls. And then Baptist Prep beating Lifeway Christian in the 3A girls. So a lot of a great weekend for all of our teams. Now, there were some teams that didn't make it to the state championship game, and that was probably disappointing for those schools. But the teams that did make it, that we had a chance to cover this past weekend, did a great job, and they walked home with a lot of state titles for the teams in Central Arkansas. So that's a wrap around high school state championships. We'll finish up how we always do with my Lutties Look Ahead. It's baseball season, everyone. It's wrapping up baseball season. Arkansas Razorbacks, they're hosting their own regional here in Fayetteville. The Little Rock Trojans going to Baton Rouge to face off against LSU, the number 6 overall team. If the Razorbacks were to win, let's talk about them real quick. They played their first game Friday at 2 o'clock. If they win that game against NDSU, they would play either Creighton or Kansas. And I have a lot of confidence in this Arkansas baseball team going forward. Little Rock, they got to put the pieces together. Really good offense, really good pitching. If they put those 2 together like they had shades of in the OVC tournament, you never know. You never know. They could find themselves pulling an upset or 2 in the NCAA tournament. Well, that's going to do it for Lutties Look Back. I know it was a little bit of a different show than normal. I got the big old rain jacket on. It's raining outside. Thankfully, we got cover here at Bogle Park. A tough weekend for Arkansas softball, but optimism for them going forward and optimism for our baseball teams, which we'll talk about. I'll probably be sitting out here or sitting outside of Baum Walker Stadium a week from now, talking about Arkansas baseball and hopefully that they are moving on to the Super Regional. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.